Oh, hi there. You're with Jurgen. Today I wanted to share some tips about how to wire up a Lionel FasTrack Switch. If you're fortunate enough to have one of the current Lionel switches, you'll notice it has a black button here that when you press it starts to cause your light to flash, so then you can use your TMC or legacy controller to program the switch by pressing switch, entering in the number, and then pressing the set button. What you may not be aware of, however, is if you have a grounding issue on your layout and you have sheet metal, putting this switch on top of the sheet metal will cause an electrical short. So what you'll want to do is take your switches and put electrical tape across all the metal areas. And then when you're finished wiring the switch, covering the wired area also with electrical tape. This will save you a lot of grief. Now, if you're like me, you probably have a lot of older FasTrack switches which don't have a black button allowing you to program them. And so out of the box, they come pre-wired with a green for through, a common, black, a red for when it's thrown, and a yellow for the lights. And then this coupler here, if you don't want to power the switch independently. And a toggle to throw it. Now typically, this works well for a small layout. But when your layout is large, what happens is the toggle switch can't reach the switch and you can't throw it. So you need to extend the wiring and perhaps also introduce for control an SCC, or sorry, an SC2 controller. So I'm going to demonstrate some wiring tips on how I've managed to achieve that, and plus also share areas where I am actually controlling two switches with one toggle. So for example, over here, you see switch number 7 is joined with a second switch. And so when I throw the toggle, they both change. Cool, right? So I'll demonstrate how that's wired. Now, key thing about working with switches that are a distance from where you have your toggle is to have the proper wiring. And I found this Minitronics wiring, which is 18 gauge, to be highly suitable. And it actually is great because you can color code it. You can have your red for your throw, your green for the straight, your black for your common, and of course there is yellow. So if you come with me for a moment, I'll demonstrate how I've wired these areas. You want to make sure that you have some good strippers handy, such as this one right here. And when you're using this 18 gauge, because the wire is a little thick, make sure you trim it tightly, as so, and that it's stranded and the strands are tightly wrapped to fit into the tight space. Okay, come with me. Now you're looking at the back of a Lionel 80-watt transformer. And you will notice I have used a white and a black 18 gauge pair of wires connected to the track, and that will run and power the switches. The voltage is set to maximum. Now you can measure that with a voltmeter. You should be getting close to 21 volts. This voltage will be connected to the SC2 controller and to each of the switches within my layout. Okay, come with me. Initially, you could be spending a lot of time underneath your train set table. So I find it helpful to have a utility light, and I hang hooks underneath the table so that I can hang it and work on the wiring. Because I'm working with a lot of voltage and I want to make sure everything is set correctly, I picked up a voltmeter from Radio Shack, I guess now called The Source, to test all my voltages and make sure they're correct. Let's disconnect you from this for a sec. Okay, that's good. Now, you recall I showed you the 80-watt transformer. Now that transformer is connected to this clip-on distribution block. So in the center of the distribution block are my two feeder wires. You see them there. And from this block, I send out two wires to the back of each switch. I also have power going right here to the side of my SC2 controller. That way, each device, each switch, and each SC2 controller has the correct voltage. And then, as you can see, I very neatly use my 18 gauge green, black, and red wiring, and I run that to the back underneath each switch through my layout. Now, recall I showed you the one switch number 7, which controlled two switches at once. I do that by joining the two switches together and then running out this wire to the toggle and the SC2 controller. Since my runs are rather long, I use these connectors throughout the layout to join my 18 gauge wire to the toggles so that I can control my switches. Here's another example. Now there's one other issue that can occur when working with older SC2 controllers. With large layouts, with a lot of wood to interfere with the signals, eventually your signals from your TMCC controller will not reach it. In that instance, position the SC2 controller right underneath a direct lock-on. That way it will receive a signal. Okay, in front of you, you have a direct lock-on. I position that lock-on directly above an SC2 controller. That way, when you're sending a remote control signal to throw your switch, the signal goes from the lock-on to the SC2 controller below, and the switch throws properly. All right, I hope you found that informative. Just remember, when you're working with switches and they're of an older variety, it's important that you rewire these switches by giving the switch its own power, by removing this jumper, by using suitable wire. Now I'm using 18 gauge stranded wire, and it's color coded so that the green wire here matches the same wire as found in your switch. The goal is that when you're using your remote handheld controller, you can signal a switch and send a control to it, and having that control feed your SC2 controller and getting a proper throw. The end result will allow you to have a series of toggle switches like I have, or the ability to control your switches with your controller wherever you are. Okay, I hope you found that informative. Thanks for watching.